I think what I have been hearing just within the board today, as well as from the community, is that we have to, not only as Kimberly has indicated, work on community education, but we have to create a process that involves the community, because there are things that they feel are important for their kids' educations that could be negatively impacted, and whether it's educating them or providing a process where they can make sure that what they feel is valid is still protected and provided. But either way, we have to create that process so that the community is more involved, because right now they're saying they don't feel like they are getting a say in this. And again, whether that it flows as part of the current task force that we have for 2017, or we create a separate one, or we create a separate one and it works with the current task force, I'm open to that, but I feel like we cannot dictate this to our community without making sure that, and the reason that it was so eloquently put that I go into the weeds is not just to pull out the weeds, but to point out that those weeds exist, and that the community will, if we jeopardize one of those things that they value, they will be in here, and then we will be nowhere. And all you have to do is look at Everett, that went down this road, Marysville, Issaquah, Seattle, Riverview, and how long are they having to wait now after trying to rush this, not getting the community's input, not educating the community, not making sure that all those things were valued. How long are they now having to wait to get this done? And I'm not interested in that. I don't want it to be not only not 2015, but at 2017 we haven't done the work, and we haven't gotten there, and then the community rises up and says it's not worth it. What you are taking away from us is not worth it, because we haven't made sure that they were aware. Then how long will we have to wait at that point? So I think we have to start now getting going, because I think we're already behind the 8 ball for even 2017.
And so you're feeling for 2015?
I am concerned that much of a change the community is not prepared for, and is not aware, and hasn't had a chance to weigh on what they value.
So as a parent, my daughter, who was in the North Shore School District, almost didn't graduate because of the start times. It was a very difficult process, and trying to get her up in the morning, and that's why we ended up putting her in North Shore Networks, which was a great alternative for us, and we're able to have her start time at 9:30 or 10, which is obviously not where we're going to be going with this. So that, to me, is where I find that concerning, that we need to get here sooner rather than later, because I'm sure there's other children like her that might not be able to graduate or to do well in school because we are not moving forward on this issue. With that said, I understand that there are a lot of issues. I liked Amy's issue of moving towards at least something, and that's the most cost-effective out of all those options that we have before us. I wasn't trying to pick on you, Amy. It's not about you. I think our messaging altogether needs to be different, and that's not a personal thing, because I think our messaging as we go through this process needs to be that we can do this, that we're going to do this. And I do feel somewhat the way Dawn feels, is that there are all these obstacles, and reality's obstacles, but I don't think we look and we don't speak about what are the possibilities, and that this can happen in a positive way and make a huge impact. There will be kids that are impacted negatively, and families, for sure. There are going to be some. maybe work schedules or whatever. I mean, that will be part of it that we'll have to deal with. So if we move to that interim level, and then we do what you said, having a community, the community involvement such as what Virginia did or other school districts have done. Their model I thought was good because it involved lots of community comments that were readily available on the 4 different scenarios. I think that we need to have PALs and other community members that have been pro-Late Start because they've done so much work on this. And I'm not speaking to them, I'm speaking to us. We have people that have already done a lot of research, and like Annette has looked at the different scenarios, and that can be a voice on one of these community committees if we're going to do that, that we make sure to include the stakeholders that have been invested in this for 7 to 10 years. And that doesn't mean that we might not have somebody who's doesn't quite feel that 30 should be the right time. So, with that said, what I'm saying to clarify in sum is I think we should move to 8/30, 2015, but I recognize that we don't have the whole board's consensus on that. So, with that said, I do think incremental change would be better than no change. I think we need to do an outcome study based on that incremental change. And in the meantime, what Sandy said, if that's the way that we've decided to go, that we involve the stakeholders in the community to help us decipher which options are the best, and then put that forward to the community to get their input and feedback. And that might take us out of this kind of battle we're getting in between 8 and 8:30. We might be able to hear better what the community, put out there. The American Academy of Pediatrics has said 8:30. What do you think as a community? And also help to make the messaging different. That's what I'm saying, and it talks about that. And so I'm just going to make one more read here, and then you can go next. I'll pass it over to Amy. I just want to say that community members and staff may either discount the scientific literature to choose to focus on perceived whether or not invalid complications related to logistical or personal convenience concerns. Thus, the more educated that district staff, including myself, that includes all of us, and the board, becomes about the sleep science, the more persuasive they will be in communicating these messages and helping to bring the community along. So I think we all could do more to help to educate ourselves on it, and therefore help to educate the community, myself included.
I think it's Daniel.
So, yeah,
I-
and you probably got most of it, but
Yeah, go ahead.
just really quick, 2 things pop to mind. I think we're all closer than perhaps we realize, first of all. I haven't been dealing with this as a board member as long, and so my perspective in terms of how much momentum we have is probably different. But I feel like since we decided to do the survey and got the results, we did the survey in November, this is early February. To me, in terms of this complex discussion, we have momentum, and I find that really encouraging. And again, we're not discussing like it was when I first came on the board whether or not we should. We're talking about how and exactly what it should look like, which I think is something we should celebrate. And and obviously, I'm in favor of interim steps. I think it's very important that we look into that, and obviously I'm very in favor of them. I just would also like to end with, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I want progress, and what's easy for us to afford and for us to roll out in a way that doesn't shock our system. I don't take any of our educational programs for granted, and I think we need to, we provide, obviously everyone volunteers so many hours because we believe in the education that we're providing our students. And, taking them into account is not a bad thing.
Yeah, thank you all for your input. And down to me, I I don't think 2015 is reasonable to make a major change. Thinking of comments on the survey results that said whatever you do, don't make a small change. But despite that, not a lot of people.
Which survey results?
The comments from the survey, if you read through the thousands of comments that 1,000 comments, whatever, there were some in there that said, please don't make a small change. Not a lot, but
Is that leaning towards incremental change, or just saying, don't just do a small change? Are those comments directed at making incremental change, or just, don't just give us 10 minutes, that's not what we want?
Both. I mean, if you're working towards a later start time, the way that I read it, I'm just reading the comments cold, so I don't know the context around what they said, but I do recall here seeing comments that said, don't mess with the system by, don't put us through the stress of a 10-minute change, basically, is what they said.
And I interpreted that as.
Is that the way you
a
interpreted it as well?
Not an interim thing, I
That's how I,
think. That's how I interpreted
Yeah.
those comments.
Yeah. So despite that, I personally think that any more than a 10-minute change is a pretty major disruption to the system that we have. I feel like I'm a realist, and while it's, these scenarios are wonderful in theory, the reality is we have one pot of money, and we have a lot that we do with that pot of money, and I think it's important to engage the community in the trade-offs that will ultimately be required to move forward on this. I absolutely agree that messaging is really important. I think that you've got 5 board members that are very much in favor of the change, and I think willing to go out and be part of the education of the community. I think that also takes time. I think it's unrealistic to expect that people would accept that in the midst of all the rest of the change that we have going on, especially the boundary changes and everything. So I am personally, 10 minutes change is the most that I would find acceptable until we explore for 2015, until we explore with the community some of the ramifications of the change. As far as my target date, I'm open. I'm not totally against 2016 being a date of change, with the caveat that I wouldn't want to do a temporary fix that would incur costs that we would not need in 2017. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't want to buy buses that we then would not need in 2017. I wouldn't want to make decisions that would be short-term decisions that would not carry us through the long term. So I would love to task a task force. I agree, people that have been studying the issue and are invested in it are great candidates for as resources to be available for staff. And I just would like to see us talk to the community realistically about what is it that you would like, because the truth is there will be trade-offs. I mean, we can pretend that there aren't barriers and challenges, but I don't feel like it's negative. I feel like it's a realistic approach to it. And like Sandy said, our best shot at implementing it without messing up the outcomes, we're implementing it where it really sticks and the community understands the reasons and is supportive of it, is if we have a process that makes sense and that involves the community. And I think that's just absolutely critical, and I don't see a way to get that done before 2015. So that's my perspective.
So your role as board president, where will we be going from here then? Because I've heard a lot of conversation about wanting to see scenarios for 2015. And if you're opposed to 2015, where will your next steps be?
I have no next steps individually. I am a member of a body that makes the decision about the next steps. We have a debrief on our agenda for the meeting that we can talk about what our next steps will be, where we see what we see going from here.
So I'd also like part of that discussion to include perhaps a discussion about hiring the Children's National Medical Center. Because if our district feels like we can't do this work, and I get this feeling from the way this is presented and from the rhetoric I'm hearing in this discussion, that while we just, have so many obstacles we can't overcome, even though I'm seeing studies that show that the impacts are very different, that some of the fears aren't realized. I'm hearing this stuff and I'm just seeing a whole lot of dragging on this, so I'm wondering if we should bypass the almost futile experiment in the district saying they can't come forward with a viable option and look to hiring the Children's National Medical Center then like Fairfax, Virginia did. Interesting name of an organization.
They
but-
put out an RFP, they didn't go to them and say, hey, will you do this? They had people respond, a request for proposal.
Perhaps we should put out an RFP then to get it done if we feel like the district can't do this. I've always felt all along the district can do this. I have no doubts that the district can and do it in the least impactful way to programming. I think we have a real strong community. I think we have a survey that says do it. So I'd just like us as a board to consider that if it appears, and I'd like to hear more from our superintendent about what his feelings are on that as well.
Well,
And
actually,
perhaps that's
I
for the
that
board
might take
meeting.
it out of all of our, by hiring, they've already done this, right? And so to hire them to help us through this might take it out of us all battling about it, and they're not battling in a negative way, but it might help us because we don't know some of these answers, help to bring someone alongside that's not, that doesn't have an agenda, do you know what I'm saying? Or that's not probably the right word to use, that sees it with fresh eyes, right? And then can help make recommendations, and it sounds like that went really well for Virginia.
When did Fairfax hire?
2013,
Yeah, like,
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay.
yeah.
So,
but
you know,
they
I'm-
need to- They came
I
out with
think-
the report in April 2014.
So
A report with multiple recommendations that they then went out to the community. And I would just remind board members that the one thing she said that she would do differently is engage the community on the front end to get more options.
which we could have an outside body help us with. I would just caution that if we're looking for something implemented in 2015, constructing the RFP, releasing the RFP, getting the responses and selecting will not help us support 2015, unfortunately. 16 and 17, absolutely, but I don't know if it would support
I
2015.
understand what you're saying, but I'm still seeing the same roadblocks being brought up in the conversation. And so if we can't move forward, then if that's the only way we can move forward, then I'd like us to entertain that. I fully believe that the district can do it.
So I guess I'm not seeing roadblocks, I'm seeing pretty open minds on what is possible. I'm seeing realistic challenges that haven't changed just because we have a new year and we still have things that we are dealing with. But yeah, we are 6 minutes away from our board meeting. So we do have an agenda item on the agenda, so be thinking about that and maybe in the context of next steps. And we will wrap this one up here. And thank you for your thoughts.